everyone, this is Yoan and today I am back with another fun quilting project and we're gonna make this jelly roll quilt. This is a really fun and really easy quilt to make. For this project you will need about 35 pieces of the jelly roll strips or the 2.5-inch strips. So if you have like one pack of jelly roll, it will be sufficient because they usually come about 42 pieces in one roll, so you will have enough plus some extra perhaps to make the coordinating throw pillow, or you can keep them for future projects, smaller project like bag or placemat or whatever it is that you want to make. You will also need 20 strips for the background, so you can either use jelly roll as well or you can cut from yardage, and you may want to choose contrasting color like I use white here for mine. This way your main jelly roll strip design will pop beautifully. I chose batik for this project. I've got this set of batik jelly roll strip from Yoan. It was actually on sale and I love the color. It's really vibrant. It's so ethnic looking. Obviously guys, you can use any fabric line that you like, any theme, any color palettes. You really can't go wrong with this quilt. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any question, don't hesitate to ask me in the comment section down below. And without further ado, let's get started. So what you're gonna do first is to unpack and unroll your jelly roll strips. The one that I got from Yoan here actually only contained 20 strips in one package, so I actually had to use 2 of these. Now you want to keep the jelly roll strips on fold, and then here I've got my background strips as well. Next we're going to cut these strips in half, so take your scissors and cut right on the fold line crease, just like so. So you're gonna end up with 2 half jelly roll strips. Then I'm gonna separate them just like so, and then continue on and cut all of these strips in halves. Again, I'm going to separate them into 2 piles the exact same way I did with the first strip. Now what we're gonna do next is sort of messing the order of these strips, because so far these 2 bundles are pretty much identical. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to flip this bundle here upside down just like so. Then I'm gonna take the top strip and move that all the way to the bottom. Now you want to keep in mind that I'm using batik, which usually doesn't have the distinct wrong side and right side. If yours do have wrong side and right side, you should be looking at the wrong side of this bundle here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut my background strips the same way, so I'm going to cut this in half through the fold line crease. Alright, so here I've got the 2 bundles of half jelly roll strips, so I'm going to take one from each and then sew them together with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. And of course you want to make sure that they are right side together. Now I'm going to take another pair and sew them together, and then I want to keep sewing, doing this chain piecing until I get to the last pair. Of course you want to make sure that there are no duplicate strips sewn together. You may also purposely pair each strip before you sew them together. Perhaps if you have the design board, or you can lay them on the floor, see how you like them best. So do what makes sense for you. Once you've done sewing, you'll end up with a garland of fabric strip just like so. Now go ahead and cut them individually. Now I'm going to open and stack them up right side up just like so. Then I'm going to take my background strips. Then what we're going to do next, we're going to sew these background strips with the jelly roll strips together. So when you sew this, you want to make sure that your jelly roll strip is right side up. Then take the background strip and align the edges, and then go ahead and sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Then I'm going to take the next strip and do the same. So I'm going to keep going and do chain piecing with the rest of the strips. Once you've done sewing, go ahead and cut all the thread from the chain piecing, so they're all gonna become individual pieces. So here I've got all of my strips already stacked together. Now take one strip and then you're going to meet both ends of the strips right side together, just like so. So you're gonna form some kind of loop just like this. Now I'm gonna go to my sewing machine and then sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do the same with the rest of the strips. Meanwhile, you wanna make sure and check that your strip isn't twisted and they are indeed right side together. Once you've done sewing all the strips together, go ahead and cut the chain piecing thread and separate them individually. Now take one of the loop strip and then you're going to cut this strip somewhere around the background strip. So pick a spot where you want to cut the strip arbitrarily. Although I suggest not to cut too close to the seam allowances, so you may want to leave about 3 to 4 inches offset from the seam allowance. Now from where you want to cut, make a fold line crease and then take your scissors and cut. Alright, now I'm gonna take another loop strip and then do the same. So I'm going to pick a random spot to cut from the background strip. Now I'm gonna take another one, and for this one I think I'm going a little bit extreme towards one side, although still not too close to the seam allowance, so I think this is good enough. And now I'm just gonna cut and voila. So I'm just gonna keep going and cut the rest of my strips. So here I've got all of my strips already cut. Now go ahead and press the strips towards any direction that you prefer, although ideally you want to press them towards the darker color. Once you've done pressing all your strips, go ahead and lay them out either on your design board or on the table or on the floor until you are pretty much happy with it. I'm showing you here a few strips since I can't really fit the whole strips in the camera. So this is the diagram if you wanna see it in the whole perspective. Obviously yours not gonna turn out exactly like this, but you get the idea. To make the top and the bottom border, you're gonna need to sew together from the background strip one full length strip and then one half length strip. So you want to sew them with 1/4 inch of seam allowance, and you will need 2 of these. So here I've got my border strips ready to go. Now I'm gonna take my pile of strips. I've already laid them out before, so these are already in order, starting from the top all the way to the bottom. Now I'm going to place one border strip on top and one border strip all the way at the bottom. Now that I've got my strips already in order, I'm ready to start sewing them together. So I'm going to start from the very top, which is the first border, with the first strip. Obviously I'm going to lay them right side together and then sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Now when you sew, make sure that you are not pulling or stretching your strips. Once you've done sewing, go ahead and finger press real quick. Doesn't really matter to which direction as long as you keep it consistent. Now I'm gonna take the next strip and sew this in the same direction. So I will have the strip at the bottom and the fabric at the top. Then I'm gonna go ahead and stitch this in place. Again, I'm gonna finger press that. Now once you've got to the between 3rd and 5th rows or so, you want to change the direction of your sewing. So I'm going to flip my fabric over. Now I'm going to take the next strip and flip this to the other end, and this time the strip will be positioned on top. So if you remember previously, I sew with the strip position at the bottom. So since I changed the direction of the sewing, the strip is now positioned on top. So we basically do this to prevent the fabric from waving or bowing towards one direction. If it is hard for you to keep on track or you can easily get lost, you can simply change the direction each time you sew the strip. So do what works best for you. Now, once you've done sewing all the strips together, go ahead and give your quilt top a good pressing. Then you're going to trim off the side edges. So what I like to do, I like to fold my quilt top in half. Then I fold that again in half. Then I will go ahead and trim off the sides until I get straight edges. And once you've done that, go ahead and layer your quilt with the quilt batting and the quilt backing. I base my quilt with the spray basting, although it's up to you. You can use pin or you can combine the two, so whatever works best for you. And then you want to go ahead and do the quilting. You can do free motion quilting like what I do here, or you can do walking foot quilting or even hand quilting, whatever your quilting preference is. I spent roughly 8 hours in quilting this quilt. I have a domestic sewing machine, nothing fancy, but I truly enjoy the whole process of machine quilting. Once you've done quilting, obviously go ahead and trim off the excess batting and backing. This is also a great way to again straighten up your quilt, and then you can go ahead and bind your quilt in any method that you prefer. For this quilt, I ended up using 8 binding strips and I finished the binding with slip stitches. So the finished measurement of my quilt turned out to be 61 inch by 74 inch. Yours may vary depending on how much you trim on each side and also depending on the manufacturers, because the length of the jelly roll may vary from different manufacturers. And that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this video served you well, and I shall see you next time with another fun sewing and quilting project. Goodbye!